My name is Professor Louise Waite. I'm the relatively new director of Leeds Social Sciences Institute. And one of the things that we do at LSSI is really try to promote the impact of the social sciences at the University of Leeds. So it's with this in mind that we've invited our guest today to discuss her research. And I'm really pleased, therefore, to introduce you to Dr. Milena Buchs. Milena is Associate Professor in Sustainability, Economics and Low Carbon Transitions in the School of Earth and Environment here at the University of Leeds. Welcome, Milena. We asked you to think about whether or not there was an object that you could show us that provided a nice link into your research and enabled you to tell us a little bit about it.
Thank you so much, Louise. It's a pleasure to talk to you. What I brought is this chain, this people chain, which I made yesterday for a video abstract. It was really after something that symbolizes the connection between sort of green issues and social issues. So yeah, it's very simplistic, but I think it works.
So could you tell us, Milena, kind of what are the main aims or the question of the research project, and also what are the key findings that you're coming up with?
This particular object actually was on a paper which emerged from a project on fair climate policies. And in that project, we were really interested to find out what the sort of the distributional impacts are, but also impacts on fuel and transport poverty, especially of carbon and energy taxes, which are obviously an important part of many climate change policy packages. EU Green Deals proposes it or highlights that we need more carbon taxes. And so it is quite high on the agenda at the moment. But the problem with carbon and energy taxes is often that they are what is called regressive. In distributional terms, they burden low-income households more than high-income households relative to their income. And they also burden, other disadvantaged people more than their counterparts. So people who are, for example, who have long-standing health issues and have to stay at home and heat their houses more, elderly people who have to stay again at home more and have to heat their homes and so on. So in the paper, we were looking at sort of different ways in which these regressive effects can be counteracted and looked at can give people back cash, or we can actually give them directly things that they can use to lower their carbon footprint, things like free green electricity, for example, or free public transport. So that was really good fun. So we modeled all of this using a couple of different data sets. So they are the European household budget data sets, and we can use those to actually estimate people's carbon footprints, which is very, very exciting, because then you can see how these are distributed across different social groups. And then you can model things. You can basically say, okay, what would happen if, part of the electricity use was replaced by green electricity, for example. So this is what we did. And our findings are giving people free green electricity and free public transport is much better compared to giving them just cash in all sorts of ways. It's equally as redistributive. But that is set in the project to be equivalent anyway. So these other options, giving people free green electricity and public transport, basically reduces emissions much more quickly and directly compared to giving people cash, because people would spend that cash back into the economy. And obviously that creates new emissions, at least if there isn't an ongoing and rapid process of decarbonisation. Also, giving people directly free green electricity and free public transport, that also reduces fuel and transport poverty, as you can imagine, because people spend less on heating their homes and on travelling around. So these were our main findings.
That's really fascinating. I mean, certainly in terms of moving away from those regressive policies to more progressive policies. Can I ask then, were these scenarios mapped just for the UK, or is this at a European or even global level? What was the kind of geographical scope of your study?
So we included 27 European countries in the study, including the UK.
And may I ask then about the kind of audiences for your research? And obviously you've described, some of the kind of policy recommendations that you've made. So I would imagine the policy field is a place that you're hoping to influence. So can you just tell us a little bit more about either the direct impacts or the hoped for impacts?
And you're absolutely right. I think we are targeting policymakers with this quite a lot. And in fact, I have presented this research to the EU Commission in sort of a couple of seminars, which was interesting to see the reactions. And just a few weeks after that, the EU also then proposed this social climate fund. I'm not saying this has been directly influenced by our research, but I think it sort of fed hopefully into this process of EU commissioners and their staff sort of thinking about these issues. In fact, one of the authors on the paper is someone who works for the Joint Research Centre, which is a Directorate General in the Directorate of the EU Commission. So in that way, we have that sort of direct policy link there. And I'm actually in the process of writing a policy brief with the recommendations to really make it quite bite-sized and easy to digest. I would obviously really hope that this gets attention during COP20.
As you know, LSSI really tries to champion both kind of multi and interdisciplinary research. So I wondered if you could just tell us a little bit about how you think that your own research is interdisciplinary.
I do think it is. Certainly, if you count the disciplines within the social sciences, I would describe myself as an ecological economist, but I've studied my PhD policy in sociology. And so I'm constantly sort of drawing on these different disciplines. I think ecological economics is by definition quite interdisciplinary because it needs knowledge from the physical sciences, from climate science, from ecology to really sort of understand how the economy is embedded in ecosystems. And also, I guess, what is still really, really important is that we question these sort of very mainstream understandings in economics with more sociological knowledge, with geographical knowledge, social policy knowledge. To say why, for example, don't carbon taxes work better? Why do they not work as expected? There are so many market failures and things that happen that prevent carbon taxes to have that impact that they are supposed to have. And you can really only understand that when you apply different understandings of how people work, how we work as a society, what power is, what sort of structural barriers we experience as in how markets work. And so in that sense, I understand my work quite interdisciplinary.
Yeah, I mean, certainly if one thinks about the kind of grand, global challenges that we're aligned to at the moment and hoping to respond to, it's very hard to think of ones that social sciences wouldn't improve understanding of, exactly as you say, around, people's behaviour, power structures, thinking about systems approaches to economies and ecologies and things. So it's great to see you really enlivening that perspective. So thank you. And then just a final question, Milena, perhaps you could tell us about where you're hoping your research will go next. What are your plans?
I do hope to continue this research on fair climate policies. I would like to do some more in-depth research, also bringing more qualitative methods into this to really understand what different countries do to address the sort of sometimes quite socially unjust impacts of some climate policies. I'm not saying all climate policies are unjust, but some are. I also have a slightly different strand of research which is called sustainable welfare, and so this is almost looking at the whole thing from the other perspective to say, well, what can welfare states do to help societies move to net zero, basically? So, looking at the welfare state and how the welfare state is still very much embedded in a growth-focused economic system, and how the welfare state needs to be redesigned to enable things like redistribution and facilitating need satisfaction for everyone, while we probably can't continue to grow much more anymore in the global north, certainly, and while we have to address net zero climate policy. And so I think this is a real challenge, but equally important to work on this. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We wish you all the best for that work moving forward. So can we thank you for coming along today to chat to us and telling us about your really interesting research. So thank you very much, Milena.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Cheers.